everybody, I'm Jammer, and welcome back to yet another Animal Crossing New Horizons video. First off, I just have to say thank you all so much for the wild support on the last video. Going through all your positive comments has brought me such joy, and I'm so happy to see it was so well received. And that's kind of where the inspiration for today's video came from, because there was a lot of things you guys mentioned in the comments of that video that I either missed or were details that you found as well. So that's kind of what we're going to be doing here. First, we'll be going through a couple of corrections where I made a few mistakes in the previous video, and then we'll go through the rest of the secrets and hidden details you guys found, as well as some other ones I've found since the posting of that video. But before we get started, Mr. YouTube told me once that I'm supposed to promote this at the beginning of the video and the end, so if you haven't subscribed, maybe consider doing it. There is plenty more Animal Crossing New Horizons content coming down the pipeline. I'm really excited for you to come along with me in my journey of creating my island. I look forward to seeing what you guys come up with as well. Without further ado, let's get started. So like I said, we're going to begin with some corrections from a few mistakes that I made in the previous video. One of the big findings I found in the last video was the glowing spot on the ground, and I talked about the money tree. A lot of you pointed out in the comments that actually the money tree does appear on screen very briefly in some of the footage posted on the Animal Crossing New Horizons website. Right here you can clearly see 3 sets of bells inside a tree, so right there it's already a confirmation that the money tree in its standard form is going to be returning. Where I was kind of coming from was the potential of the money tree actually having yellow leaves, but what it looks like here is it's just going to be the standard money tree, which has been in the series for quite a while now, including in New Leaf. Another correction I want to make is talking about watering flowers. A lot of you mentioned that in New Leaf, villagers did this all the time. I played New Leaf a ton, and I did see villagers water flowers, but for some reason, it never registered to me that it was actually affecting anything. I thought it was just a fun, cute little animation, and you still had to do it yourself. That was a mistake on my part, but there were a couple of other animations worth noting since we're on the topic. First and foremost, we see a villager here using a bug net to actually catch a butterfly. But then the player character is coming out of nowhere to actually snipe that butterfly from underneath. Like, come on, that's me. Don't do that. This is just one example, but there are a lot of different idle poses that the villagers can have, such as sitting on the ground, eating ice cream like we talked about. And one that was quite clearly obvious was, of course, the villager dancing in front of their house. There's a lot of examples of this throughout the direct. Like I said, more life being breathed into these characters. There was one additional one I did want to point out. I apologize for the terrible quality of this clip, but I couldn't find a better version. But this clip shows a villager still equipped with the popsicle, but actually continuing to do an animation beyond just licking the popsicle. We see her bending down to sniff the flowers, and oh my gosh, it just melts my heart to see this. So let's jump over to the section of the character customization. Like many of you pointed out, there is no male and female in this game. They already previously announced over E3 of last year that there will be no gender selection. You can choose any sort of hairstyle or clothing that you see fit for your player character to wear. And I was aware of that, but for some reason I was still under the impression that perhaps you did select initially at the beginning whether you chose one or the other. But as we can clearly see here, right in the hairstyles tab, the first row are feminine hairstyles and the bottom row is masculine hairstyles. So right there proving the point, like you all made, that the option to wear whatever hairstyle you want is right there right off the bat. So perhaps it does bring us back to the question of what is the face tab for when it comes to customizing your character? One thought is perhaps it could be a collection of face presets so you can kind of get started and then go into deeper customizing your character. Another idea potentially could be that the face icon is where you can choose your skin color, and instead of the paintbrush towards the end of the tabs being the skin color, that could be something like makeup or perhaps facial hair like we saw before. It's hard to kind of tell going off it there, but you guys were right on a lot of things. And while we're talking about character customization, one of the things I talked about was the option to use Nook Miles to unlock more hairstyles. I made a quick slip up and said all 3 were hairstyles, while in fact the third one was actually a collection of hair colors. And finally, when I was talking about crafting materials and I said that you can't just collect plastic, well, a lot of you said you could just get it from the ocean. And well, that breaks my heart, but I know it's true. If that is a feature in the game, it would be kind of a cool idea to be encouraging recycling plastic from the ocean and making that into a game mechanic. I can't. No, we're moving on. So let's talk about some new details. The first category we'll talk about is some furniture related items. Let's start off with this scene. Do you notice anything in particular? Anything out of the ordinary? This scene looks pretty standard overall. However, there's a clear contradiction to previous Animal Crossing games. On the bench that the villager is sitting on, there's a ukulele on the bench with her. Which why this is a big deal. Now you can put layered furniture, like stuff you could normally put on top of tables, you can actually put on benches and perhaps chairs as well, taking up that space of the seating area. And speaking of placing furniture in unique areas, in this scene, of course, we actually see you are able to place furniture on the rocks as well. That was a question I had initially, because for some reason I had the idea of like maybe the rocks are off limits, but nope. You can clearly see here there are plenty of options to put furniture on the rocks on the beach. And while we're here, the one thing to quickly mention is that little blue shell on the shore. Typically the shells we've all ever seen in Animal Crossing have always been that peach or tan color. So it makes me wonder what's so specific about this certain shell. Maybe it's a blue shell snail, who knows? So this is a detail I did cut from the previous video, but I did want to bring it up here. Throughout the direct, a few examples of tool displays. And what I mean by tools displays, it's like you'll see a shovel standing up on its own, or a fishing rod just like floating there in the air. And so similar to what you can do with clothing, where you can display clothing, it looks like you can also now display tools rather than it just appearing on the ground. And speaking of which, briefly, very briefly, you can see another new type of shovel. At first I thought maybe this was the golden shovel, but no, it actually kind of looks more like a plastic shovel, similar to what we've already seen with like the plastic watering can. Again, tying back into the fact that the oceans are getting destroyed. You'll also notice in the same scene in the sandbox, there happens to be a basketball. Now, before you get your hopes up and think that like the balls return from Animal Crossing GameCube, I think what's probably more likely here is that this basketball is a furniture item, just something that they placed on the ground to, give it that look of their, I don't think this is an actually interactable ball. If they are returning, that would be of course super exciting that you can kick them around and bring them to villagers as tasks. But as far as I can tell right now, it's probably just a furniture item. So going back into the crafting system and the DIYs, there's a variety of different UI systems that are in place to really add to quality of life features for the player. First of all, there's a collection of icons that can really help you understand what can be done with those items. First, there's a brush icon that can be in the corner. That indicates the item can be customized to different colors, as we've already seen in the customization section of the direct. There can be a check mark on the item, and that's an indication that it's something you've already previously crafted. And finally, in the other corner, you see a box. And this is probably an indication that this is an item you probably already have in your storage or in your personal inventory. These same things are also indicated in the full screen version when you click on the item itself to make and to craft it. But another thing that's shown off on the screen is actually how big the item is, whether it's 1x1, 2x1, 2x2, showing the size of the item. But what's really interesting is in this section, there's an example of an item taking up a half space on the grid. Here, as you can see, the signpost is 1.5 by 1.5. Now, we have seen half spaces before, like in Animal Crossing Happy Home Designer, but we've never seen items themselves taking up a half space. And I think it's really cool that we'll be able to fit in more stuff. And rather than this signpost taking up 4 spaces, it can be 1.5 by 1.5. And speaking of customizing furniture, when you actually go into the customization of furniture to change its color and whatnot, in the corner, it costs a currency. We don't really know what this currency is. It just says it costs yellow boxes to customize the furniture. So it does make me wonder, how do you collect these yellow boxes? Is it an item you can craft? Is it something that you perhaps buy from Timmy and Tommy? Is it something you redeem Nook Miles for? I hope there's not too much of a limiting factor on these customization boxes, because I'd hate for them to limit the freedom in that way. I don't think it's going to be the case, but it does make me wonder how you'll be able to get these yellow boxes. And the final thing to wrap up furniture is in this winter scene, you actually see the player shaking a tree lit with Christmas lights and an ornament drops out. It's a cool little detail, and kind of building off that with, the idea of this crafting system, I really wouldn't be surprised if you could use this ornament item to actually craft holiday furniture. So let's talk about some of the character for the direct. As many of you pointed out, and I did immediately when reacting to the direct, when the rescue services are called and you're going to be initiating your fast travel system, you can immediately tell by the music that's playing, and it's of course Rossetti's theme. And his animalese, or his voice, is very similar to what Rossetti sounds like, his speech pattern, and even in addition to that, the helicopter itself looks like it's wearing a hard hat. So it's quite clear that Rossetti here has a new job, and I'm very thankful to see that he has returned. In the section where they show off the traveling merchants and the traveling special characters that can visit your town, one of which is Kix, and we see him showing off some of his wares to the player character. We see, of course, him selling his traditional items of shoes and socks, but new to Animal Crossing New Horizons, he sells backpacks. So now we know in order to get those kinds of accessories, he's the one you're going to go to get those kind of accessories. I wouldn't be surprised, though, that eventually the Able Sisters could maybe be upgraded at some point, and you'll be able to maybe get accessories through them as well. But at least with the knowledge we have so far, it looks like their way to get backpack accessories and purses will be through kicks. And speaking of special traveling characters, everyone's favorite character that arrives every Saturday evening is, of course, KK Slider. And we've already had official announcement that the character will be returning in the game, and there really is no surprise there. And matter of fact, we even have official renders for the character, but we've still yet to ever see it in game. Or have we? In a brief few second clip up in the corner, basically being covered by some of the UI, you can barely make out the fact that KK Slider is visiting this town. Really, to all we can see where he's located is it looks like he's in front of the town hall area, similar to like all the other traveling characters. The reason you can tell is that the double doors have a lot of similarities with the doors of the town hall, making the most sense to being that's where he's going to be. Although he does look like he's like literally right in front of the doors. And it does make me wonder if Brewster eventually makes his return, and if you're able to build his cafe, for example, will KK instead start going there and playing his music at the cafe like he typically has for the past, every entry after GameCube. It's still cool to see him making his appearance, and there was really no surprise there. The last character to mention, well, is it a character? We don't know. Towards the end of the direct, when the villager is doing some terraforming, up in the upper right-hand corner, there is a tombstone. And with the omission of a lot of characters we have yet to see so far, Tortimer, Cap'n, Joanne, heck, even Nat and Chip, people are theorizing that maybe this tombstone is representative of one of those characters. I really hope not, because that would be kind of morbid. Now let's talk about some of the details surrounding houses and buildings. In the scene where it shows off the player character deciding where a new villager could move their home, there's a quite obvious detail that I completely didn't even think about. Look how close the player is placing that house to the river. Like, it's literally on the edge of that river. And in New Leaf, whenever you were going to place stuff, it was so particular about where you could place things because of obstructions like rivers, rocks, and other immovable stuff. But look in this scene, it's literally flush with the river, and I love the idea of this flexibility when placing stuff in tandem with the terrain. So basically what this means is moats confirmed. You can build a moat around your house if you wanted, and that's exactly what I'm gonna be doing. A new video was actually posted on the Animal Crossing New Horizons website showing off some examples of rooms in homes of players. But the biggest takeaway from this is actually the entrances going to each room are customized based on the wallpaper. As we've seen so far, when we first were shown that the additional rooms were available, we just saw the base wooden frame. But as you can clearly see in this clip and screenshot, the doorways can actually be customized as well. And it really makes me hope that the feature that came from Animal Crossing Happy Home Designer will return here, where you can add doors, blinds on the windows to really customize those aspects of your room. Then in this screenshot, in the background, you can actually see a new shop tent. Clearly very different from the player characters' tents. It's very different from the camping tents, and as well as the tents for the villagers that you create when they first move to town. But I think more likely what it might be is the construction of a new shop. So there's a couple of more miscellaneous things I want to talk about before we wrap things up here. I talked about previously how transparent patterns are now a thing in Animal Crossing New Horizons, giving you the ability that you could, if you place it on the ground as a pattern, it can blend more better with the environment. So you could make little footprints and little clovers here like the examples were shown. And actually, if you look at this screenshot, we see it in action. Tucked behind this tree on the far right here, you actually see barely a glimpse of a little paw print, which is identical to the pattern of the footprints we saw previously in the pattern editor. Some new screenshots recently surfaced from a Walmart display ad, showing a couple of new screenshots we've yet to see before. The most interesting of the set is actually on a player character's birthday in their home. There's a bunch of villagers in the house. In the middle of the room, you can actually see a piñata and confetti coming out of it, in addition to the player character actually swinging a bat at the piñata. So perhaps there's actually more interactive stuff you can do on your birthday rather than just, oh, your villagers are here at your house, you talk to them, you blow out the candles, I guess, and then they just leave. one of people's favorite feature in Animal Crossing Wild World was the message in a bottle. If you just sent it out to sea, it would just go to a random town. And when talking about Animal Crossing New Horizons, everyone thought it would make so much sense to come back in this game because, I mean, hello, and New Horizons is all about these deserted islands, and message in a bottles only make sense for that kind of aesthetic. Well, in fact, in this quick gameplay clip here, while the villager is fishing on the end of a dock, you actually can see a bottle towards the beach off in the corner. Now, it could be just a furniture item or some sort of little aesthetic thing that they put next to the dock to represent that, but I think it's more of an indication that message in a bottle will be returning, especially because we've already seen with the special edition Animal Crossing Nintendo Switch, some of the patterns on the back do show message in a bottle icons. Then one last thing to mention when talking about the Nook phone and the apps on that screen. When I went through all the apps and talked about it, one of the clips that I used showed an arrow going to a second page of apps. And I thought it was pretty clear right there that because the Rescue Services app wasn't on that front screen, it was pushed over to the second screen. But it's still probably an indication that there will be more apps even beyond the collection we see here, because it would be kind of odd that if this was the full collection of apps in the game, why would they just put Rescue Services as the single app on the second page? I think as the game progresses, we'll continue to get even more apps beyond the ones we've already learned in this direct. And that is all the secrets and details you guys pointed out to in my last video. So while this direct answered a lot of questions, and now we have even more details that we just went through, there's still a lot of unknowns going forward to the future of New Horizons. A lot of characters we've yet to see return, like the police dogs, Cap'n, Tortimer, shops such as Shampoodle, Dr. Shrunk, the Dream Suite, and even items like the diving suit. So far of what we've seen in the museum and the encyclopedia, we haven't really seen any indication of any sort of diving specimens you can collect using a diving suit, so perhaps it might not be a feature this time around. But what are your thoughts going forward? And if there's anything else I missed, let me know in the comments below. Also, I'd love to hear your ideas and inspirations for how you want to make your town. I have so many cool ideas, like I want to put my house up on a platform, have like a moat surrounding it with like double waterfalls, like a bridge coming over it. Like, I just can't wait for the crazy creations you guys will come up with. I think this is going to be so much fun. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a big, awesome like. And if you haven't already, definitely subscribe for tons more on Animal Crossing New Horizons. Like I said, I have a lot of plans going forward for when this game releases, and I really hope you come along with me through this journey, and I can't wait to see what we all come up with. Thanks again, guys, so much for watching, and I will catch you in the next one. See ya!